Welcome to the WNBF UK Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the WNBF UK Podcast with me, Sarah Glanville, as your host. Today we are joined by our newly crowned WNBF UK Men's Physique Pro and Men's Physique Overall World Champion, Charlie Brisbourne. How good does that sound, Charlie?
Yeah, it's still weird. Actually, I've literally got my, I've got it next to me in the gym to remind me. My pro card, you know, the big plastic thing that they gave me. I've got that in my flat still, and I need to get a frame for that to put it somewhere in here.
Yeah.
To remind me every now and again.
When you need a reminder on a hard set. It's an absolute stormer of a season last year, Charlie. Has it sunk in yet?
There's days where it does, and there's days where it doesn't. Like, it is a mad thing to get your head around. Like, it was a crazy year all in all. And like, I mean, even going to the Worlds, I definitely had the attitude of, well, I've never had the attitude of I just want to turn up and just make the numbers up. I do want to go out there to have the intention of trying to win.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't go expecting it to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, to get the overall as well, like I'm pretty sure when they called me back for the overall, I've still got like a mouthful of peanut butter and jam, because I wasn't even sure I was meant to be going back on stage again. I didn't realize it was an overall. But yeah, it was a crazy year, and yeah, it sinks in more and more each day, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's probably something that is sort of the dream season almost. Like, you've imagined that this possibly could have happened at some point, but yeah, when it actually comes to reality, it takes a long time for that to sink in. So we've got so much to get through today. We of course need to deep dive into your incredible season, and I think our listeners are going to get so much from like how you got through to that season as well, like the journey through prep, as well as all the glory at the end. So I think a really good place for us to start is for you to talk us through what your 2022 season looked like. Yeah,
so I mean, I wasn't going into 2022 with the intention of stepping on stage, if I'm completely honest. Like, I've done it a lot over the years. So like, my first competition was back in 2014, back with UK BFF, when I wasn't even aware that kind of drug tested shows were a thing. I wasn't even aware people were taking drugs and competing, to be honest, back then. So I've done my fair share of competing, but I hadn't competed since 2018 was my last season. And really all that happened was I'd kind of started trimming down for a holiday to Ibiza in June of last year. And that was for a client's wedding, actually. And I'd got part way through that, lost a few kilos. And to be honest, that was when I think it was Harry Ranson, actually, the men's physique guy who won the Worlds last year. I came across a post he put up of like the British WNBF show, and then him going and winning the Worlds.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first bit of awareness I'd had of the WNBF doing anything in the UK, with being out of competing for 4 years or so. And I looked at the results, and I looked at kind of the winning physiques and everything that was going on, and thought, well, actually, like, since the last time I'd stepped on stage, it looked like men's physique had moved on a little bit. Physiques were a little bit bigger. You could get away with being a bit leaner, whereas the last time I'd stepped on stage as a natural men's physique guy, I was actually kind of penalized for looking a little bit too bodybuildery. So that's when I then kind of came away from it, went into bodybuilding for a little while, and then kind of left that where it was, because really I preferred doing men's physique, if I'm being completely honest, to bodybuilding. So yeah, I'd seen the results and went out to Ibiza with the intention then of continuing kind of dieting whilst I was in Ibiza, and kind of just thought, well, at that point, I think the Supernaturals were about 6 or 7 weeks away.
Yeah.
It wasn't long, but like I say, I'd already started kind of a cut down, and I knew I'd maybe got 5 kilos to lose.
Yeah.
So I knew I could do it. It wasn't fun going to Ibiza necessarily and counting calories and being the driver, but you do what you got to do if you want to win. And then, obviously the British came around, where, I mean, it was a great show. I mean, probably one of the best. Well, it was the best natural British show that I've done. Yeah. And I just thought the way it was run, the amount of competitors, Andy and Steph did a fantastic job. I'd had a bit of conversation with them beforehand to kind of get a bit of guidance from them in terms of whether I would kind of suit the category or whether I was kind of wasting my time and I should go into the bodybuilding. Yeah. So they were very helpful with some direction there. Yeah. And then, it was a really competitive show. Obviously, at the British, I came second to Dave. And it was good to obviously then meet him. And it was quite good to kind of come away in second place to then kind of think, okay, well, if I'm going to go to the Worlds, then I'm going to have to up my game a bit, because I'm going to try and win the Worlds, but you've not kind of won the British, then there is some work to do. Totally. But it's quite a nice position to be in, where you're the one that's kind of hungry to do a little bit more rather than the person that's being chased, I suppose. Yeah. But absolutely. Then there was 6 weeks obviously in between the British and the Worlds, and the rest kind of is history, and it went better than I could ever have imagined. Probably got a little bit leaner. And presentation was a little bit better. As always, it's like the more times you're on stage, the better you'll be for the sake of your presentation. Agree. I had some really good feedback on the couple of things I needed to tweak, and obviously that made a good difference. Yeah. I mean, like I say, a bit of a blur, and I'm sure there's probably questions you want to pick out of all of that. So throw it back to you. I mean, it's just a dream season, but I love what you said there about, obviously you had taken some time away from stage, and you were, after 2018, kind of thinking, right, where do I sit here? Because the feedback had been you were maybe starting to border on being a little bit too big for men's physique, which is not something many people hear, I suppose. They're almost too big for the category that they're wanting to compete in. And then obviously seeing how the sport has evolved over the last 4 years, up until last year, it's kind of seemed like, actually, I think I can still be competitive here, and obviously being incredibly competitive. But then also going to speak to Andy and Steph and how accessible they are before the show, to double check where you are in terms of what they think, where is best for you to compete, what category should you step in on stage. Is men's physique still right, as you were hoping it would be? And that's great. That's a tool that more people should probably take advantage of. Like, the guys are very, very accessible. The same with the judging panel. Obviously you had your feedback after the show on what you could improve on before Worlds, which you took advantage of. But again, everyone on the judging panel is probably very, very open to people dropping a message and saying, where do you think I sit? Like, I think everyone within the federation is so open to having their input and supporting athletes to get the stage, but also to stand where they belong in terms of the category that they want to compete in. So I guess you kind of covered it already, but with coming into this season, you had aspirations to do very well at Supernaturals. Did you imagine, or did you hope that you were going to be getting an invite to Worlds? Was that on the cards at all? I was hoping to, because I knew that would come with like winning, coming second, maybe coming third. Yeah. But at the same time, I knew that I'd bring the next problem, which was, am I going to do the Worlds? Yes. Because then that obviously extends the prep. But like I say, I've just never really entered anything from like the egg and spoon race at primary school to competing at the Worlds without the intention of trying to win it. It's just competitive. What my mentality is around competition. And with that said, it depends completely what you want to get out of standing on stage. Like, I've met loads of people and talked to loads of people that have done it or want to do it because they want the accomplishment of standing on stage. Because let's face it, like, it's something that a very small percentage of people and just have the courage and the bottle to do, let alone stand on stage and actually kind of like feel good and feel like you're kind of in the right place. But yeah, for me, it was always like, right, see how far I can take this. Like in 2018, I'd got to kind of world level, then went out with the WNBF and competed out in Miami. That was what was the men's athletic class. It was kind of like shorts, so not bodybuilding, but not men's physique. And I think at that point as well, it was still a bit up in the air on what was kind of getting rewarded. How are people meant to be posing? Or at least that's kind of how I felt going into that. So, and for that reason, I didn't do as well as I would have hoped to. I think I got fourth in the end. So I knew if I was going to go to the Worlds and get an invite, and I was going to go, then I was going to make sure I didn't go into it without knowing exactly what I needed to do in terms of changes to my physique, if they needed to be any, presentation, because it's the presentation side of things that, especially where, well, it doesn't really matter what the category is, to be honest. Like, if you don't get the presentation right, then it doesn't matter if you're the biggest guy on stage, the leanest guy on stage, like you've got the best abs, none of it matters if you're present badly. And that's the male categories, the female categories. It can make all the difference. And I've seen some guys with fantastic physiques over the years kind of not place as well as they should, or feel like they could have, if they just got the presentation right. That's why I went up to Sheffield, met Josh, one of the other British pros, went through posing with him. Like I say, had a little bit of guidance from Andy and Steph in that realm as well, because it does change from not just category to category, but federation to federation, what federations want and how they want you to present on stage. So that was something that I knew I needed to work on going into the Worlds. And it obviously made a good enough difference to obviously get the result I wanted.
I love that you're competitive. I think that when you talk about people wanting to step on stage and having for the experience, I think everyone who steps on stage in bodybuilding has some element of competitive spirit. Like, I think that just it's the sort of sport that you have to have a competitive edge. I love that you're always competitive. I personally, I think for me, it was a lot about managing my mindset, because I am super competitive, but I didn't want to feel disappointed. So I was very much telling myself I was taking part to have the experience. But I have a lot of respect for people who are just like, do you know what? I want to win and I want to do well. And that's what drives you, and that's what gets you through the hard days on prep, if that's what drives you in the gym to keep pushing on the days that even in off season that are tough. I think that's a fantastic sort of way to think about it, and a fantastic sort of driving force. I also love what you said about doing your research and understanding what the federations want from you to be able to do well on stage, especially with that competitive element in your mindset. You know, it's so important that you do your research, and it's so important that you invest the time, not just in prep to get onto stage in condition and with the right musculature, but also to present yourself well. And I think that goes back to people feeling like they belong on stage. If you know what you're walking into, you know what's expected of you, you know what the poses to look like and how you're to present yourself and what's coming next, because you've done the research, that in itself gives you a sense of belonging on stage, I think. So yeah, I mean, obviously all that hard work totally paid off for you. Pro card and overall titles, not one to sort of shy away from. That's incredible. But the pro card and the overall title weren't the only titles that you achieved last year, Charlie. You became a dad as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that was one of the other trophies. Absolutely.
So there's loads for us to get onto on this topic, because I don't imagine that prepping with a newborn is the easiest way to do it. So you said that you were going through your holiday diet to go to Ibiza, and you decided at that point you were thinking you might step on stage. So how did you decide that 2022 was the year that you were going to return, apart from just kind of getting back into shape over your holiday?
I think because I'd seen, like I say, the physiques that had done well at the Supernaturals last year, and then seeing some of the stage shots of the Worlds, I thought, well, I feel like my physique isn't far away from that, or it's in the same kind of realm. Like I say, these guys look a little bit more muscular than perhaps the guys that were getting rewarded 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And like you say, because of having the arrival of little baby Cleo this April, so she's coming up to her first birthday next month, there was a bit of me that was thinking, right, well, it's never going to be as easy as it is now. Maybe easy is the wrong word. Maybe it's only going to be harder from now on. With obviously her growing up and her going from being a baby to a toddler and everything that comes with that. So, and business and everything was in a good place for me to kind of put the time and the energy aside to give it a go. Like the first thing I had to do is speak to my other half about it, speak to my girlfriend, and she actually was with me back in 2018 when I'd last prepped. So she kind of knew what she was in for. But when you throw a baby into the mix as well, it's obviously a different animal again. So I had to get the green light from her, because you know what this kind of thing's like. It's not the kind of thing you want to do without knowing that your other half's on side and they're kind of trying to understand the process of what you're going to go through. And yeah, when she said yes, I was kind of like, well, I've got nothing to lose. It's not like I've not been training for the 4 years previous. Like I love training, and I'll always kind of be at a point where I could just drop into a prep and could get lean enough to get on stage in however many weeks. But it's not like I thought, oh, I need to take an off season, build an extra 5 pounds of muscle or anything like that. I felt like I'd got the muscle, and all I needed to do is go through the kind of cut phase and get the presentation right. And then I would have been thereabouts. And then I just thought, well, let's see how the British goes and just look that far ahead.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, totally. You need to get your buy-in from your other half. I think if you're prepping, they're prepping with you to a degree, because they have to go through all of the roller coaster that is prep beside you. And especially with little Cleo, it was, you know, an extra consideration, I suppose, for her and you as well, like how that was going to be different and the dynamic of how that was going to be different this time round. So I guess that's a really good question to go on to. What were the challenges that you faced in this prep that were maybe different to preps before, considering that Cleo was so new and was here this time?
Of course. Yeah, so I can't lie, it was really tough at times for various reasons. I mean, even the British show, the Supernaturals, I travelled up to Birmingham the night before the show to settle in, get sorted with my tan, all that side of things. I've always travelled to the venue, the town at least the night before. And Cleo wasn't great. She was, we thought just got a bit of a cough and a cold, a bit flu-y the week leading up to the show. And she actually ended up needing an ambulance to come out the night before the show, because she got a case of scarlet fever, basically. So bacterial infection, not fun at all. No. But I didn't really know anything about it until going in to compete the next day, because my other half, Jess, deliberately didn't like message me in the middle of the night to say, oh, don't know what's going on, called an ambulance. And I mean, full credit to her for shouldering that and taking that all on without kind of it being an impact on my kind of day going into the British. But then obviously to deal with the fallout of that wasn't particularly easy. And just kind of, you get to the stage in prep where doing anything but kind of work and training is hard. Yeah. Like whether that's like, and anything extra physical as well. So for me, like I can remember specifically like avoiding like holding her any more than I had to, because I almost didn't trust myself to be able to contain her, because she was getting bigger and stronger and wriggling around. Yeah. And like, unless it was a dumbbell or holding onto the side of the stepper machine, Like that was what all my energy was being used for at that particular point. I remember in prep, and I think that was like between the British and the Worlds, that kind of tough 6-week period. The one thing that kind of made it a lot more manageable, that I'm not sure everyone's girlfriend would let them do, but I basically had my own bedroom, so I didn't have to deal with anything during the night or anything like that with Cleo. My other half, Jess, she took all of that on, and it made the difference for me in terms of just making sure I was as well rested as I could be, so that I could then go into the next day, do what I needed to do work-wise, do what I needed to do training-wise. And unfortunately, it still meant by the end of the day I was knackered and I didn't have any energy left for those two. But that's the issue with prep. You kind of, if you're going to get the best out of it, you tend to find that you've got energy for like any kind of 2 of 3 things, and the 3 things are like your work, as in like whether you're a PT or a coach like I am, or whether that's like a different career, and then you've got your actual training, and then you've got kind of your family, your social, your friendships and whatever. But obviously the 2 things you really need to kind of maximize to make sure you do what you need to do is the training and the nutrition side of things. And obviously you need to keep a roof over your head and feed your family. So your work's got to take priority as well, which unfortunately means the thing that loses out, and it was the thing that obviously then lagged for me, was having the energy and the attention to be the best I could be for the sake of my other half and for Cleo. But for Jess, kind of seeing the way 2018 went with prep, she kind of half knew what she was in for, but it was definitely a different ball game with having a little one, because it's just another thing that requires your attention, your energy and your love, and quite frankly you don't have a surplus of that when you're deep into prep. And that's just the reality that people need to know if they're kind of considering getting stuck into a prep and trying to be competitive.
Absolutely. And I think for me, like my experience on prep was exactly as yours was, and me trying to imagine doing that with a young family, I can only imagine like the additional challenge, because it's exactly what you said. Like as you're getting leaner and as you're getting closer and closer to stage, and you're getting more and more siloed on that show day and pushing towards it is that things do fall away. And as you say, it does tend to be the social element of your life. It sounds like Jess is an absolute saint. It sounds like she's been probably a huge factor in the success that you had last year, being able to understand what was coming, I suppose, and also be open to how that was going to be new for both of you with Cleo being there, and the dynamic, although she had an understanding of what it was going to be like from 2018, that there was probably going to be stuff that she was going to have to pick up for you to support with Cleo, so that you could achieve your own ambitions with competing. I mean, when you got the invite to Worlds after Supernaturals, you kind of said before it was deciding whether you wanted to go. How did you feel about that? Was straight away when you got that invite, were you thinking, I want to do this? Or was that a conversation that you had to have? What was the process of deciding to go to Worlds like?
Well, I knew straight away that I wanted to do it. But again, it had to go back to the jury and see how it was met, because I would, for especially for how stressful that British show was, with Cleo having scarlet fever and whatnot, I could have completely understood if my girlfriend had said to me, look, it's been a bit rough, I can't imagine another 6 weeks of this. And she kind of said, it has been rough, but at the same time, I don't want you to ever kind of look back and think, what if? And I had a similar conversation with my stepdad about it, and he kind of reminded me of a golf, I think it was a golfing competition that he missed out on going to go and do when he was probably my age. That was a really good opportunity for him, and he still looks back now, like 35 years on, and says he wished he had gone. And I mean, I've always tried to live my life as much on the basis of, I don't mind so much regretting doing things as much as I I really don't like regretting not doing things.
Yeah.
And on that basis, I kind of thought, well, if I can get the green light from Jess and make her kind of as comfortable as she can be with it, then I was prepared to go full steam ahead and do the absolute best I could based on if I'd had feedback from the judging that was like, oh, you could do it putting on a couple of pounds of muscle here or there, then I would have maybe been a bit more hesitant. But because I knew there was changes I could make mainly around the presentation side of things, I could do that within 6 weeks, no problem, and bring a superior physique. Then I thought, well, why not go for it? And obviously I did, and I'm very happy I did.
Yeah, no, I had the same thought when I got the invite, and I was literally come off stage and I was like, oh my God, I want to go to LA. And I was like, I'm going to have to break this to Steve, because slightly different scenario to you. My prep had just been very, very long. So obviously didn't have a baby at home, and that was obviously the additional challenge that you guys had. But my prep had been since the beginning of January. So when I was stepping off stage in October saying to Steve, let's go for another 6 weeks, you can imagine his face was a bit like, oh God,
that's a hell of a prep.
Yeah, it's a mammoth prep. But yeah, for me, it was the exact same thing when I was like, I need to get buy-in from Steve, and it's not just a decision that affects me. And of course, I'd love to go, but it just goes again to say like how important it is to have the support around you. Because although it's you that's prepping, it's everyone in your circle that needs to pitch in and support. And it's great that it's not just Jess. You've got, you know, your family, your father, and saying to you, you know, like, you go for it. Take the opportunity to go for it. So I think that's fantastic, and you definitely made the right call. Actually remember after you'd won backstage, coming backstage to congratulate you, and you were on FaceTime to Jess and Cleo, telling them all about it, and you could just tell like how much that moment meant to you to be able to share it with them, even though they weren't in LA with you. So do you want to tell us a bit about their reaction when you won?
Yeah, so it was a funny one, because I think if I recall, I was speaking to Jess and Cleo on FaceTime after I'd won the class.
Yeah.
So won the medium class, and
your pro card.
I mean, obviously they were ecstatic.
Yeah.
Jess had been watching the live stream for about 6 hours.
Yeah.
So, because obviously, as you know, it's a long day. Any kind of kind of put together bodybuilding show, it's always going to be a long day, but then we've got the time difference as well. So I think for them, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that, maybe. Yeah. Because men's physique typically is later into the day, into the show. So yeah, they were knackered, but very happy. And then actually Jess and Cleo missed the overall because Jess needed it to change Cleo's nappy. So I don't think she realized when we were coming back on for the overall, or well, I didn't even know I was going on for an overall at that point. So she just got the stream running in the background and missed the moment of getting the overall title. Yeah. But then I managed to speak to my mum as well. She'd stayed up and watched it. There was a few friends back home that had all stayed up, and I mean, like I say, it was a long day for us, but I can't imagine sitting and watching through the night the live stream for literally like 8-9 hours or however long it went on for. Yeah, very long day. There's just so many competitors, and it's one of those things with bodybuilding shows. People are always like, what time are you on? And you're like, what? How long's a piece of string? I have no idea. Yeah. And I feel for guys that are putting the shows together, because on one hand, if people just get hustled and bustled off stage too quickly, then people will moan about, oh, I was only on stage for 2 minutes, I never got looked at. Yeah. And then if you've got shows that are going on 12 hours long, then people moan about it being a long day. So it's very difficult for kind of for the guys organizing these shows to get it right, because there's a happy medium somewhere. But I mean, it was a big show. It was going to be a long day. And when you're a competitor, you are just clock watching all the time because you're just so G'd up for your class. So it does seem like it's just going on forever and ever, right? But that's the nature of the shows. That is it. But it was such a great day, and it was lovely that everyone stayed up to watch it.
I think that's so special. You get to share it in the moment. And what a perfect analogy for your prep that Cleo was doing a nappy change, right, for your overall, like she had to just steal the show a little bit at the end there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm seeing that more and more as she's getting older.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I guess that probably through the prep with the additional challenges, you said it probably found it harder than any preps that you've done before. There's probably 100 times that you probably could have just said, you know what, it's not the time, this isn't a year, got lots going on at home, sleep's compromised, maybe, you know, your missus haven't picked up loads for you and you're wanting to support her as well. I guess I'm really interested to understand what your why was. Like, why did you keep at it? Why was this year you were going to step on stage?
Mm-hmm. So I think with having kind of the history I've got of competing, and I think if I don't know off the top of my head, but if I was to guess, then it's probably somewhere around 15 to 20 shows I've probably done since 2014. And with every show that you do, obviously you get a little bit more experience, you learn a little bit more, whether that's about you as a person, whether that's the process of competing. And obviously with all of the track record I've got of competing, I felt like I was going in as good as I could be in terms of like my experience and what I know about the process. Yeah. And in some ways, like I would agree with you that it has been the hardest prep, but in other ways, I wouldn't say it was the easiest, but I wouldn't say it was the absolute hardest just because of having so much of a better understanding of myself, my physique, my training, and everything kind of around it, kind of compared to say my first few shows. Yeah. I mean, it's another topic, but I think it's helped me through not having a coach over all those years to really kind of forced me to try and figure myself out rather than put it on the plate of somebody else and getting them to do it for me. So there's been a lot of trial and error over the years. And I mean, arguably some shows I could have done better perhaps if I did have a coach, but then like I say, I wouldn't have been forced to kind of figure myself out as a person, as a competitor. And that just, I think, put me in a position where I then thought, right, well, I know myself better than ever going into 2022 and looking at what I feel is getting rewarded now in men's physique. I feel like I've got a good punt at this. I'm 31 now. Yeah. So you can talk about like muscle maturity and all that side of things. And you do need that if you want to do well going into natural shows. Like there's more and more young freaks coming through that do just like, I think compared to when I started, there's just more guys that have got it together from the very off, and it's a more competitive space now. So there is some very good young guys coming through, but typically you do need some good years of training under your belt and that muscle maturity that comes with it, so that then you can get on stage and again, whether you're in the bodybuilding class, whether you're in a men's physique class, you're not just lean enough and big enough, but you do have that kind of denser look that does get rewarded across all classes. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if the WNBF does masters classes, but it won't be too many years before I have to start looking at that. So you could argue I'm at my physical peak right now, maybe for another year or two. Before I've got to start thinking about arthritis and my hair going grey.
So you were just like, this is the chance, this is the perfect timing, like you said as well.
I just think the stars lined up, and like I say, if I hadn't been leaning down for Ibiza and got ahead of my diet, then maybe I would have thought it's a step too far. And equally, if I'd been told, no, you definitely should go in the bodybuilding class, I wouldn't have felt I'd got enough time to do what needed to be done, because you do need that extra level of condition. You do need to spend the extra time working on posing and a routine. Like men's physique, we don't have to worry about that. You're judged on 3 or 4 poses and holding them and trying to look like you're having a nice time and not much else. Like it does mean you've got to nail those things, but with bodybuilding, there's just so much more to it in terms of like, there's so many more boxes that need to be ticked.
Yeah.
And like I say, you've got to get to a next level of condition,
Absolutely.
which quite frankly, I wasn't and probably won't be prepared to go to again, for just how much more that does take.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's that crispy condition that's coming through in the natural shows for you to be at a competitive level in bodybuilding now is just immense. It's just a different level of condition. And it's that last bit of the push for that condition that's the hardest. So I think, as you said as well, like obviously Cleo's here, but she was the youngest that she was ever going to be last year, and probably the smallest, most manageable little bundle that she was ever going to be. So it just seemed like timing was perfect, and it was obviously completely the right decision, because you've had, as I say, a dream season. Pretty outstanding. So there's probably a lot of our listeners who have families, young families, that would probably get a lot from you giving them a bit of advice on how to handle your prep, how to handle bodybuilding as a whole, like the whole training journey as a whole, with a family. What would your advice for them be?
Well, the way like my business is set up, it does help that, I mean, I could probably throw a tennis ball to Cleo right now from my doorway into the home gym that I train clients from. I do my own training from. So that had definitely made things a lot more practical, because obviously that cut out the time of traveling to the gym, traveling back from the gym. If I've been needed for whatever reason, then I'm accessible. Luckily I can lock the door from the inside as well, so if I want to be unaccessible, I can be. But obviously that's something that has been amazing for me, and it's just part of how I've tried to kind of put my life together. I appreciate not everybody can just set up their kind of gym at home to do a similar thing, but I suppose the advice that would go out to anyone is you've got to look to kind of prioritize the things that are the most important, and that goes for like the training side of things as well. Don't be fluffy with your training. Don't train for 2 hours at a time. Like, maximize your training when you can train, and like really don't overcomplicate things. Like that's something that I see more and more. And if you just like scroll through social media and look at kind of the fitness scene, like in a lot of ways, it's great that people are going to the levels they are in terms of the science and managing every little thing to be as optimal as you can be. But optimal doesn't always win shows. Like, I did not have an optimal prep. I was in IB for 6 weeks before going to the British, and all the stuff that was going on. In my opinion, you're never going to be 100% optimal unless you live a very sheltered, very mechanical, caged life, and you can't strive for that as someone who's a family person or someone who doesn't want it to kind of take over their life. But neither do you need to be successful if you get the big fundamental things done well. Get enough muscle on your frame so that then when you do diet down, you won't be underwhelmed with what you see. Be in a calorie deficit, but don't sweat if you have a day where you're a bit over or a bit too under. Like, look at kind of look a bit more macro, look at the week, look at the month. Like, still just, you have to accept sometimes that things don't have to be perfect for you to keep making progress. And to get lost in the little things, you'll end up kind of being your own worst enemy in terms of like a prep for sure. But then if you're just looking kind of at the muscle building side of things, like, if I'm being totally honest, I've never had a structured off season in my life. I just train in a way that I enjoy training. I've managed to kind of achieve building a physique that I like the look of, based on what I was always striving for, which was like a men's health kind of cover model physique. That's what I always kind of aspired to when I was getting into training. And I've been consistent and progressive with it for the last 15 years because I've enjoyed my training. It's not been a chore. It becomes a bit of a chore when you're obviously prepping and you're cutting calories and whatnot. But let's face it, the majority of your time training should be around building muscle and building the physique. And if you don't do that in a way that's enjoyable, you're never going to be consistent or progressive enough with it to bother dieting down. And I think that's a really important thing for people to remember in a day and age where we are obsessed with being optimal all the time. It's like the biggest buzzword in fitness right now. And like I say, I was far from optimal last year, but it didn't mean I didn't manage to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think as a nature of what makes a successful bodybuilder often is the ability to turn your head onto what you're doing and like having a bit of a relentless focus towards prep when it comes to stage. But it's also realizing that there's give and take in that, and it's not all or nothing. It's not like if you miss a day or you don't quite hit a step goal or you end up having an extra 3 rice cakes at the end of the day, you've not broken prep, you've not broken yourself. It's having that, flexibility with yourself and understanding that it's not every day has to be 100% perfect. It's about consistency over time. And as you say, like really knowing exactly what you need to achieve and focusing effort to it. So like you said, you don't need to spend 2 hours in the gym. If you can get your session done in an hour, get it done in an hour so you can go spend some time with your family, or get some more work done or whatever it is that you need to do. But I guess setting realistic expectations that it's going to be tough and that you're going to have all these competing priorities, but coming into it with a bit of a plan of how you're going to do that.
I think on the same thing as well, like I said, with talking to Jess about going into the prep before it, I can remember particularly back in 2018, because it was the first time obviously she'd been around it. You have to kind of draw it out for someone and say, look, this is and it might be the first time you're competing as well, so you might not really know how it's going to go, but you should know that it's going to get tough, and it's going to get tough because of X, Y, and Z. So it's really, really important that you put the people around you in the loop enough to know what to roughly expect. You can't tell them when exactly, because some days will catch you off guard that you just have particularly bad days. You're particularly low energy, you're particularly short. I can remember preps in the past where I'll deliberately like pick the shortest words I can to put in a sentence to reply to people, just because the idea of speaking to people was exhausting.
Yes.
But you can't complain and whinge about people kind of not understanding the process if you've not kind of tried to lay it out from the start and
absolutely
put them in the best position to be able to deal with you. Even for me with clients, like I have to obviously face clients most days, and to speak to them was really important and say, look, just so that you know, this is what I'm going to be doing, and make them part of the process so they feel like they're on the journey with you is a really important thing, because otherwise they're just going to think like you don't like them all of a sudden, or you're having a bad day, or they're going to think it's them. And quite frankly, like they have to be a priority if that is in your job, because without them, you're not paying for any plane tickets to go to the Worlds. Right? So your network and the people that you are around most days, like they need to be put in the loop and be part of the process. Absolutely.
People are interested as well, and I think that when it is this air of mystery around what you're doing and they're kept out of it, it feels far removed. But it's just, as you say, enlisting them to be part of your support system, letting them know what it is that's going on, signposting, and you're never going to always get it right, and there's going to be days that are hard, but trying to have a little bit of self-reflection as well. Like I find myself quite often being a little bit short and then having to go back and saying to Steve, look, I'm just tired, I'm having a bad day. But keeping people in the loop, I suppose, and keeping people on your side, and they know what you're doing, they buy into it.
With clients, with one-to-one clients, it definitely helped give them some perspective as well. When I'm just asking them to like eat a bit less chocolate, when they see the depths you've got to go to do what you do, they look at what you're doing and go, actually, it's not that bad what he's asking me to do. I've only got to get my steps in and go to the gym a couple of times a week, but it could be worse.
Could be worse. That's brilliant. I think that's really, really helpful advice for people trying to balance that. Is there anything specific? We've also got our first timers show coming up. Is there anything specific advice wise that you would have for first time competitors?
Yeah, so we touched on it a bit already, obviously, but the presentation side of things is everything. Like if I'd got on stage at the British show and I hadn't have sought out the advice that I needed in terms of getting my presentation right, I would not have come in the top 3. I would have not got an invite to the Worlds. And it would be very easy after competing however many times I've competed to have gone into that show and gone, oh, well, I've competed before. I know what to do.
Yeah.
I've done men's physique. I know what to do. Like, but it's not the reality. Like these shows from federation to federation do vary the criteria. All of the classes have evolved since I very first started competing. So it is important that you do get in the loop of understanding what is required from you in terms of your presentation, and especially if you're a first timer, because I can almost guarantee that any first timers show, if you just get on stage and know how to present yourself, you'll be in the top half straight away, because so many people do go to these shows and haven't got a Scooby-Doo. They'll watch a YouTube video of an American men's physique show and think, okay, well, that's how like Brandon Hendrickson or Jeremy Bundia posed in 2018 or 16 or whatever, and that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
Ryan Terry looks great when he puts his hands behind his head and tenses his abs. I'll do that pose. Like, well, if it's not in the criteria, you'll get marked down for it.
Marked down, yeah.
So, yeah, if you're a first timer and you're looking to compete, that is huge. But with that, obviously, then I can say there's pros and cons to having a coach going into a show. Some I've kind of alluded to already in terms of like learning yourself and your own body, your own physique, your own brain. But there is a lot to be said for getting around people that really do know what they're doing and have done it, even if that's just for the sake of, well, like what I did with, like, I did a video posing kind of tuition session with Josh Croggan, again, men's physique pro. He got his pro card the year before. He'd won the British. He'd come 3rd at the Worlds. Yeah. Who better for me to kind of speak to about, well, what do I need to do? Yeah. And you've got to seek out the right advice in that side of things to really kind of give yourself the best chance to turn up on the day and give yourself the best account you can. And even with doing that, like I did, there was still things that after that competition was like, okay, I could have done better if I did that, maybe if I tweaked this. So there's always going to be stuff to learn. There's always going to be improvements you can make. But a lot of that comes from like seeking out the right opinions from the right people. Maybe you do have access to someone you trust to fully coach you. If you want to go down that route, if you feel like you need the confidence of having someone in your corner, because I can definitely see the merit of it, especially when you get to those last few weeks where it doesn't matter how experienced you are going to question things. You are going to think, well, am I looking a bit flat today? Am I looking too lean? It doesn't matter who you are, you will experience that in those last few weeks. So yeah, I can see the merit of kind of having a coach on board, perhaps depending on the person involved. But yeah, the main one I would say has got to be the presentation and getting that nailed. And obviously WNBF run these workshops now where you can actually physically go and meet other people and go through the posing criteria for the class you want to do. So it makes every bit of sense to do that. And if not, then there's access to good people that can, like I say, like I did posing sessions digitally. I went up and visited Josh to get some hands-on help from him. You've got to seek those people out to give you the help that you'll need.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you say, do the posing workshops. You can go to them if they're close by to you. The guidelines, the sort of federation rules and expectations are well detailed on the website as well. And like I am a bit of a geek like that. Like I literally sat and read all the federation, what is expected, what do the poses look like. I think Steph and Andy have got some cool little videos on YouTube actually that go through the poses and what they look like. But yeah, my advice would be the same as you. Don't just take it off a YouTube video, because it's hard to replicate what someone's doing on a YouTube video if you can't see the 3D of their body. And I think it's so good to reach out and get some pointers from people who are experts in the field. I mean, people will be coming to you now, Charlie.
Yeah, who knows? Like, who knows? But I mean, I think that the one other thing that's similar to that as well, that you get from like seeking out the advice from people that have done it and been around it and are a part of it, is you need to go in with a realistic kind of expectation of where you're at. And if you're surrounded by yes people and your mum thinks you've got a great physique and you'll do well, that's not necessarily going to be the best kind of grounding to go in with realistic expectations into a show. You, like I say, we said it earlier in the call, like you might want to just step on stage because you want to say you've done it, and not many people can do it. And great, well done. Like, let's face it, like if you ask most people what their worst nightmare is, it's waking up and standing on stage in their pants in front of a load of people.
Where people have a lot.
It's a real cliche nightmare. And we're like training to do it. But you've got to have realistic expectations of where you're at. And again, that comes back to kind of having honest advice from the right people, because the right people won't lie to you, but you do have to be receptive to constructive criticism as well. If you've been training for a year, whether you're male or female, like the odds are you're not going to get on stage and do well in one of these classes, in terms of placing, perhaps, especially with the way the standard is now. And if you want to get on stage and you want to win, then you have to understand that, well, potentially there's going to be a few years taken out prioritizing building good quality muscle tissue that you're going to have to take before you get too excited about shaving your chest and fake tanning. And on that's the other thing, get your fake tan right, because even at Worlds I saw people with like shaving rashes and they hadn't exfoliated properly. I've seen a few hairy backs, and I just thought, how can you put all that work in to then not do the skin prep and the shaving, like for what is like a day's worth of, or a week's worth of just a little bit of TLC, like a bit of full body exfoliation, whether you shave, V, whatever route you want to go down, you've got to be in a good position to then get the tan done well. And ideally use the tanners at the I forget the name of the tanning guys that did the WNBF muscle tan, was that it? Those guys were phenomenal, like helped me out big time, patched me up if I needed patching up. Really, really good guys. And equally at the Worlds, the guys there were fantastic as well. I've always used the official kind of tanning people for whatever show I've done, because I've always thought, well, it's one less thing to stress about. As long as I turn up and I'm hairless and I'm exfoliated, this tan will go on well. And you don't want to be that person that turns up on stage and you're blotchy or you're not tanned enough. And
take the stress out of it. Like as you say, if there's, and even if there, for whatever happens, like if there is a little bit of a patch on your tan that the pro tanners have done, they'll fix it for you. Like that's what they're there for, is they want you stepping on stage looking great in your tan. So and look, the way to think about your exfoliating and your shaving on show week is it's extra cardio. Think of the wee extra calories you're burning doing your exfoliating.
I was just thinking, I can't believe my girlfriend has to do this like regularly. I get around to doing it. I do it like once every few years. But it does make a huge difference. So people have to, especially going into a first timers show, where like I think for my first men's physique show back in 2014, I don't think I shaved my legs. Luckily I'm very fair, so you wouldn't really know I hadn't shaved my legs, but I just didn't know it was a thing. But ultimately the more hairless you are and the better your tan is, the better your muscularity is going to appear. And like in the same way as the posing, sometimes the person who is the leanest and the biggest or the most aesthetic on stage, it's completely ruined by either bad posing or a tan that's just melting off them.
Yeah, just comes down to what we're saying about being prepared, doesn't it? So just speak to people who've done it. If it's your first time, there's so many people out there, especially within the community at the WNBF, who'll be happy to give you some tips, to tell you what to expect, whether it's posing, whether it's skin prep, your tan, and there's loads of advice that the Federation put out through their social media as well around the different things that you need to consider. So just take advantage of everyone who wants to help and get yourself prepared and as ready as possible, I suppose.
Yeah. On that note, if anybody does want my input on anything, I'm more than happy to answer any kind of messages through Instagram or email. I don't prep people to compete. Like, it's never been my speciality within what I do with clients. I personal train and coach. I can be my own client, but I can't imagine anything worse than having 10 clients that want to all get on stage and knowing what goes into that. Like, full credit to people who do prep those kind of clients and work with them. But from a standpoint of what I actually work with, my clients are more lifestyle clients, busy guys, a few mums that I work with in person. But I'm absolutely more than happy to give out advice for free. If people do want to drop me a message about anything, then more than happy to. And equally, if they do want to work with somebody to help them, then obviously I've got some good contacts that I'm more than happy to put people in contact with if that's what they want. That's
fantastic. We'll have your Instagram listed in the show notes, but also on the YouTube it'll be underneath your face right now, so everyone can reach out to you. Fantastic. So thank you so much, Carly. That's been such a great episode. You know that I can't end today's episode without going through the quickfire question round with you. So I'm going to ask you 10 rapid fire questions. I need you to answer instinctively the first thing that comes into your head. Are you ready?
It's dangerous, but yeah, go.
Yeah. So cream of rice or protein oats?
Protein oats.
Post-show meal of choice?
Ribs. Lots of ribs.
Oh, I love ribs. Okay. Pump or stim pre-workout?
Pump.
High rep range or low rep range?
High.
Steps or Stairmaster?
Stairmaster.
Free weights or machines?
Oh, free weight. Yeah, free weights.
Are shows one from the front or one from the back?
Front. It's a big misconception.
Yeah. Off-season,
especially in men's physique, because you got to have a face for it and pretty teeth. All helps.
Presentation is so key in men's physique, isn't it?
That's another tip, actually. Invisalign. If I didn't get Invisalign last year, I don't think I would have done as well.
You wouldn't have been as confident to smile.
Yeah, because you do get judged on that. If you don't smile and you don't look like you're having a good time, then you will not place well. So yeah, Invisalign and a bit of teeth whitening goes a long, long way.
There you go. Charlie's working for Invisalign. He's getting commission.
I wish.
Okay, where was that? Off season or prep?
Off season.
Best part of show day?
You know what? I've got a really good association with the tan. I like the smell of the tan. Like, there's just something about show day tan that as soon as I smell the tan go on, I'm like, okay, it's on now. I'm ready. Yeah. Until then, you're kind of questioning a lot of things because you don't really know what your physique 100% looks like till you've got the tan on.
Yeah.
So every time I've kind of gone and done well at a show, as soon as like that tan is set, I've had a look and I've gone, okay, yeah, it's on. We're ready. Right. So yeah, weirdly, I like the tanning bit.
I love that. Awesome. And last one, your favorite thing about being a natural bodybuilder?
Well, let's face the facts. Like, there just ain't very many of them.
Yeah.
Like, in this day and age, like, it is becoming more and more rare as kind of, it's a complete podcast in itself, but like the assisted side of bodybuilding is becoming more and more prevalent. I think, to be honest, as is natural bodybuilding. Like, there's more good press around it than there's ever been, but that's just kind of as fitness generally is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But especially as I've got older and I've seen some guys maybe that have started off natural and then they get to a certain point where they then go, oh, I'm now going to cross over and go assisted. There is something quite satisfying about staying the course and staying on track naturally, because I know it is there both on the male and the female side, but I can only speak from the male side that there is massive pressures to go down that route at various points in your kind of bodybuilding journey.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I was very sheltered when I started training. I was 13, 14 years old. And back then it wasn't cool to go to the gym. I stuck my weights under the bed and got them out in the evening and did it in secret. Yeah. And it was a long time until I was aware that drugs were even a thing for people going to the gym. And it is very tough for young guys to get into training and to kind of stay motivated and stay the course without going down that route when they see so many of their peers jump on a cycle of God knows what, put on 20 pounds in who knows how long, and just see what looks like accelerated progress ahead of their slow, steady race that it is being a natural. And it's something I'm very passionate about in that sense. Obviously, it's why I do what I do. It's why I encourage, like I say, people to message me if they've got questions, because I think it's really important that guys and girls do kind of put out their experiences and all the positivity that there is around staying natural and everything good that comes with it, because it is kind of a route that has a lot of potential pitfalls if you go down the other route. And let's face it, most people don't actually want to get as big as the majority of the guys that go assisted and go kind of to the level of competing. They do just want to look like they could stand on the front of a men's health magazine or a women's health magazine. And you don't need to take drugs to look like that.
No.
You really don't.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's so much to be said for people like yourself who are proud to talk about being a natural athlete and who champion for it. And I think that you're right, there is a lot of pressure, I think, out there from people who are potentially in commercial gyms or, you know, bodybuilding specific gyms, and they're surrounded by people who are talking about it, using steroids, or who are encouraging them to try it. The opportunities within the natural bodybuilding scene are epic. If you look at the WNBF as an example, the opportunity to go to World Championships, to stand next to some of the best natural bodybuilders in the world, Charlie, you being one of them, you know, the opportunity to have access to, you know, you're saying guys reach out to me and talk to me, the level of accessibility and the sort of people that are involved at the sport at a high level. Everyone's in this because they love the sport and they're passionate about it. There is a lot of opportunity to do well and to do amazing things as a natural bodybuilder. And I think the WNBF are doing a great job of showcasing that through social media, because I think that that's something that the non-tested feds have done well for a long time, is showcasing the opportunities and the aspirational physiques of people who compete in non-tested shows. And it's been all over social media, and that's people's exposure to bodybuilding. But I think the WNBF are doing an excellent job of trying to showcase the incredible people that take part in the shows, in their shows, with natural physiques. Because, I mean, let's be serious, the standard at the WNBF UK Supernaturals final was incredible. Like it was at Worlds level, like the size of the team that we took out and how well everybody did at Worlds, like it's exceptional.
Absolutely. And like, I think people forget with like the natural bodybuilding side of things as well, like so many people that are working on the stuff behind the scenes, working on the show days, they're not making money out of it.
No.
And all of the promo around all these things, there isn't nearly the amount of money to spend on it as there is in the bigger non-tested federations. And it's one of the reasons it bugs me a little bit when people gripe about, oh, it costs this much to enter and it costs this much to be a member, it me this much to get a tan. Well, what do you think you're paying for? Like, all these people aren't there for kind of the big payday at the end of it, for kind of putting on the drug testing, putting on holding these events, these big shows. Like, they're not cheap, like venue costs and whatnot. So, I mean, as a competitor, I'd be happy to pay more. I mean, everyone will probably moan that, like, they probably don't want to pay more, but you've got to appreciate that the money goes into the pot to make the shows as good as they can be, and that goes from the ground up of actually kind of getting the shows known by lots of people and all the promo around it, to making sure that the drug testing is as effective as it can be on the day, so it's the most kind of fair, even playing field it can be. But it is great to just see the evolution of it. Like I say, being a little bit kind of, dare I say, a little old now in the competition scene, especially in men's physique. Like, I've seen it evolve a lot over the years, and it's great to see. And ultimately, that's lured me back in with 4 years being out, seeing what a show the WNBF put on before, to then think, you know what, that looks like something I want to get stuck into. That looks to me like natural bodybuilding is thriving, not dying. And there was a few years where I thought it was kind of, it was struggling. Like, I know there were shows that were losing money, let alone making any of it. And it wasn't looking great. But the WNBF UK has obviously kind of been put together and run very well this first couple of years it's been in action, and that's full credit to Andy and Steph, really, but also all of the team that they've brought on board and picked out to kind of help them, because no one person can put all that together. It really is like a huge team effort. So, absolutely, even down to the team captains going out to the Worlds. Even them.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, no, it's so true. Everything you said there's so true. So quickly before we finish today, tell us, what's plans for you? Are you stepping on stage as a pro potentially this year? Maybe?
It's a big can of worms. I'll try to keep it brief, but I'm still working on the same ethos as last year, where it's like, well, nothing's ever going to be as easy as it is now. Like, Cleo is crawling around very quickly, and I look at her now and think, God, am I going to be able to chase her around and catch her if I'm prepping? But she's only going to get quicker, and let's face it, like, as she gets older, there is going to be more to deal with. So there is a bit of me that feels like there is no time like the present, and let's get stuck in and kind of see what happens. It is difficult when you've got to that standard to look at it and think, right, well, to come off the back of winning the Worlds and obviously qualifying via coming second at the British, when the standard is up there and you've kind of come from here up to here and only this much above it left, it's very hard to kind of approach it and go, yeah, I feel like there's more to gain, there's more satisfaction to get out of this. So that is something I have to kind of consider as well. Like, will anything measure up to kind of being the world champion that the experience being last year? With all that said, obviously you'd have to do a WNBF show before the Worlds in November to kind of qualify to be there as a pro. So there's a bit of me that thinks about doing the Dubai show in August, but it's a long way from the Worlds in November. A smart man would pick a show that goes very close to that Worlds, which would potentially be the Germany show. But again, that's all based on if you're intending on attending the Worlds. You might just want to go do one show, dip your toe in being a pro, seeing how it falls, and then kind of revisit it another year. I don't know. So I'm probably going to give myself until the end of next month, so the end of April, because then realistically, if I was going to kind of compete, I would need to start putting some plans in place. And again, I'd have to go to the boss and get the green light from her on whether it was going to happen. She has said that if it was to happen, then this year would be better than any other, because if we're kind of fortunate enough, then there may be a point in the next couple of years where Cleo has a little brother or sister, and then that would be absolute hell. Trying to prep with two of them. So there's options. There's options, which is nice. Like, it's nice to have the options, not feel like, oh, I've got to do this specifically or that because of X, Y, or Z. So I'll take another month, and then you'll be one of the first to know.
Oh, I'm excited to hear. We just need to work on Steph and Andy. There's enough of you men's physique boys and pros in
the British
the UK to do a British, I think. So that's just my humble opinion. But you know, over the next couple of years, as more pros are crowned in the UK, we'll hopefully be able to start delivering on that. I know that there was a little bit of chat about whether they could try and see if they could make that work this year, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
It would be very tempting, because you do have the issue, obviously, if you go and compete as a pro at the moment, you've got to go abroad, and that takes with it kind of, you've got the cost element, you've got the time. That means for me, time away from obviously my family, time away from clients. So it is a big commitment. And then potentially, if you're going to do it again, to then go to the Worlds,
it's a lot.
So there's a lot at stake once you kind of go and decide to do it. But if they decided to do a pro show this year, then that would give me a headache for a UK show. But I know the boys that could do it in the UK. I mean, I think David signed that piece of paper quicker than anyone.
God.
I know he's pushing hard for wanting a British show.
No.
So who knows? Maybe this year, if not, potentially in the next few. But it would be a great progression to see, like, considering the federation is so young in its UK form. But who knows?
One to watch. I'm excited for it. Fab. Thank you again so much, Charlie, for your time chatting to me today. It's been a great conversation. And thank you to everyone who's listening along at home. We really do appreciate you. In 2 weeks, I will be back with episode 6, and it's time to speak to the one and only Zoe Leeming-Watts, the natural physique, the WNBF Pro Overall Women's Bodybuilding World Champion, DFAC Pro World Champion, and NPA British Champion, all achieved last year in 2022. So I know that you've seen Zoe on stage at Worlds, Charlie. Go and sum it up for us in one word.
Well, I wouldn't like to be stood on stage next to her. I would feel fat.
Shredded, like conditioning, like you believe. So Zoe and I will be deep diving into a great chat about what it takes in an off season to build the level of muscularity that Zoe has achieved as a female natural bodybuilder, and also what it takes to achieve the level of conditioning that she has to get on stage, which, as I say, if you haven't seen her stage shots, go and check them out. She's absolutely superhuman. Zoe is a serving member of the military, so we'll also explore how this impacts her bodybuilding. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Until then, thank you again, Charlie. Thank you everyone for listening. Have a brilliant few weeks, and this has been the WNBF UK Podcast.
Check out CNP, our sponsors, and sign up for our events at WNBFUK.com.